Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to be sharing my thoughts on the Maddaddam trilogy by Margaret Atwood. The first in the series is Oryx and Crake, the second in the series is The Year of the Flood, and then the final installment is called Maddaddam. I'm going to share a little bit about every book and also my general thoughts on the trilogy as a whole. I think I have more to say and more that I can say about the first two and less to say about the last book, only because I feel like I will be getting into too much detail that might be considered like spoilers, which I don't want to do. So I will make this a spoiler-free review, and we'll kind of not talk at length about the last book in the series, but we'll still give my overall thoughts about it. So the first book in this trilogy is called Oryx and Crake, and it introduces us to the character of Snowman. The book is written from his point of view. He is kind of wandering around this post-apocalyptic landscape. He is not sure if anyone else has survived. He may well in fact be the last person alive on Earth. He's ruminating this, and he is also thinking about moments from his past and what led up to the apocalypse and his role in it. The world is introduced to us in this first book. I think the world building is very good, very interesting. There are lots of layers to it. The first book focuses a bit more on the kind of biotech and genetic engineering side of this world. There's also a lot in the first book about social degradation and exploitation. We come to understand those things as Snowman is looking back at his life. We start to get an idea of how the world is structured, with the privileged living on sort of, I guess, estates or in areas that are funded completely by corporations. So anyone who works for the corporations, so-called the corps, are taken care of. They have a place to live. They have decent jobs, probably work in tech or research. They have housing, all of those things, and they live in kind of a bubble. Everywhere else are the plebe lands, where the plebes live, and those places are dangerous. In this book, we hear about the plebe lands, but you don't really get a sense of what they are exactly, because Snowman is privileged, and his look back at how this apocalypse, how this collapse happened, is a very sheltered view, because we only know what he knows living inside this bubble. And while Snowman does have a part in the story of how this happened, he is a bit of a bystander in the actual action. And the other two characters, Oryx and Crake, are more central to the story, even though they're more background characters. Crake is the genius, he's the mastermind. He has these ideas, he is pushing the envelope. His companion, Oryx, is a bit more hard to understand. In a lot of ways is the more interesting of the two characters. And actually a lot is packed into her character, despite the fact that we don't know a lot about her with any sort of certainty, and we only really get to know her through what she means to others, what she means to Snowman, and what she means to Crake. And actually, Rick McDonnell had a really good post on his Instagram, Litfic Rick, which I will try to remember to post in the description box, talking about Oryx and Crake, and specifically talking about the character of Oryx. She has kind of this dual reality. We aren't really sure who she is, but she kind of presents two different facets. She is wise, but she's also very naive and perhaps overly trusting. She is very strong, but also like vulnerable and beneath everything, probably really fragile. In The Year of the Flood, the second book, we follow an entirely different group of people, the God's Gardeners. This is a religious cult, a commune of people living together, and the religion centers the environment and nature, and they believe that something is coming, the destruction of the earth is coming, and they are preparing for it. They are growing food, they are learning survival skills. This book, instead of being set in the apocalypse and looking back, it's very much centered around the past. So we get a lot better look at this world and how it operated before the apocalypse happens. And you kind of work up to, you get glimpses of the future, but you kind of work up to that point. This book focuses a lot less on the science, biotech, engineering bits of the world and focuses a lot more on the environmental parts, the environmental degradation and the like corporate greed. It gives you a better feel of how the society operates, whereas in the first book, you are really looking at the world from inside this bubble. The people who form the God's Gardeners come from a lot of different walks of life, and we get more information about life in the pleblands. In this book, we follow two different women, a young woman and a more middle-aged woman. There's Ren, who is the younger, and she was brought to the God's Gardeners when she was a young girl and kind of grows up there, so she's fully enmeshed in the society. And then we have Toby, who comes to God's Gardeners as a grown-up and has to kind of wrestle with her own rational, logical, pragmatic feelings and thoughts and reconcile that with this very religious, spiritual existence. It's interesting to see how she grapples with that, how she becomes a part of the God's Gardeners, how she finds her way in that community. Toby is very much a survivor. She has this backstory out in the pleblands, all of these horrible things that happened to her, and she survives them. Ren has her own story as well. I don't think it's as compelling as Toby's. Just like Oryx and Crake, where I think Oryx is the more interesting character, I definitely think Toby is the more interesting character, but I do think that's purposeful because Ren's mother eventually leaves the God's Gardeners and takes Ren with her back to the corporation. She is sheltered at the God's Gardeners, and then she is sheltered at the Corpsey Corps, and it leaves her with this kind of almost childlike innocence, bordering on being completely helpless, whereas Toby is very self-reliant and really understands the world. In the final book, Maddaddam, I don't want to cover any characters or plot points because I think that might ruin some of the story, but in this book, you do get a lot more of the backstory. You see how other characters were connected in ways that we didn't realize, and it kind of fleshes out all of the little missing pieces of how the apocalypse came to be, how all of the characters ended up where they ended up. That's what really is the crux of this book. I think sometimes things felt a little too coincidental, like it's a bit too much of a small world how people are connected. And for me personally, the third book was the weakest of the three. I still think it was very good. I gave it 4 stars. I gave the other 2 5 stars. So when I say it's the weakest in comparison to 2 books that I thought were excellent. I think there are definitely things that happened in the last book that needed to happen to make the story cohesive and satisfying and to develop the characters and themes. But I don't think it needed to be as long as it was. I definitely think there were some parts that felt a little gratuitous or unnecessary, but like I said, I still liked it. I still enjoyed reading it. It's just not as strong as the first 2. That being said, I think the trilogy overall works well. I think the character development and the plot, how it progresses and the world building, I think those are all well done across the trilogy as a whole. Obviously, I enjoyed these books. I think they're super well done, very well written. I don't think they're for everybody. When I say that the world is exploitative, that can be very blatant and graphic in the book. There are things that you read about happening in the society that are very horrible, stomach-churning types of things. This is the type of dystopian book that can make you feel icky, disturbed, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. It happens to be my cup of tea. If horrible graphic things don't bother you, then I would definitely recommend this trilogy. I think it is just so well put together and a frightening glimpse into a world different from ours, but not different enough. Those are my thoughts on the Maddaddam trilogy. If you've read these books, I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.